So a business founder before he was 30, working with banks to bingo halls. Our guest on the Business Spotlight today is the CEO and founder of Powell and Exscien Training, Alex Powell. How are you doing today, Alex?
Very well, thank you, David.
Good stuff, good stuff. So firstly, thank you ever so much for taking the time to join us today on the interview and share your story. So I thought it'd be great to kick us off if you could share with us sort of what it is that you do, what services your business offers, if that's okay.
Okay. We're an app developer. I've always been a software guy. The business was founded out of the death of another company. So it's got a quite odd starting point. I worked for a company that delivered training, had a load of customers, and it closed, and they said, "You're out of contract." So I looked at it and said, "Really out of contract? Yep, we're not even paying redundancy." So the next day I called all the customers, and we started. So with that kind of baptism by fire, we ran for about a year and a half, doing a lot of different jobs. Some of those jobs you just mentioned. We got to 2008. This was Exscien. We got to 2008, and I saw the queues build up at Northern Rock, and thought, this kind of bouncing from A to B is going to cause us a problem. We need to find something else. At the same time, I'd met a Formula One. He was out of work at the time, but he is now an ex-team principal, Otmar Safnauer, via my daughter, who was 6 months old at the time, and his daughter, 6 months old. They met in a North Oxford monkey music. Forget this power lunch. Wow. Monkey music's where the action happens. So we met each other like over 6 to 12 months, a few times just as families. And we sat down in a pub in Oxford, and it was actually to avoid doing the washing up after a Sunday lunch. And we started talking about apps because the iPhone and iPods had just been launched at that point. So I said, "Is there anything we could do in F1?" And Otmar said, "It'd be great to have the timing screen." I said, "Well, I could do that. We could show you where the cars were as well." So Otmar just said, as I learned, he said, "Oh, I'll just go and get a meeting with Bernie." And I thought, that's probably not going to happen. I've heard this kind of thing before. Anyway, 3 weeks later, we were driving slightly quickly down the M40 to Knightsbridge to meet Bernie Ecclestone. And I presented 3 pieces of paper with Otmar in about 5 minutes, and he liked it. At which point, we then bought the rights for the mobile live timing service from Formula One to do it on mobile for the first time. And the business was started. So we sold to the public. We were part of the iPad launch with Steve Jobs personally picking us as one of the launch apps. And we did that till 2018. We now have stopped that when there was a change of management. And obviously the Americans have bought the business. They decided they're going to restructure everything. Formula One's a complicated business for anybody who's ever worked in it, or for anyone who hasn't and's thinking of it. Then the next thing we did was we started working with on IoT, Internet of Things products. So we've built big Internet of Things infrastructure for a global company on contract. We've always done contract work as well. But during that period, it was quite clear I've always wanted to build another product. So we've recently just finished and launched Eventer, which is our team logistics app. It's not just an app, it's a team coordination system. It came out of Formula One. So if you imagine you've got a Formula One team with 100 people, 24 races is it this year? They're all trying to fly around. They fly in on Thursday, on Wednesday. Some of them are bringing parts. They fly in Saturday, Sunday.
It's a logistical nightmare, isn't it?
A logistical nightmare. They actually have 2 or more travel coordinators full time at the teams working on making sure all the bookings, all the parts are moving everywhere. So we work with the teams to build this. And obviously Otmar's experience as team principal helped a lot in this. To build an app that would tell everybody their own personal itinerary, and also, more importantly, what everyone else was doing. So they could see who was in what hotel, who was on what flight. They can communicate. There's a chat service. And Yeah, so we're just launching that as we speak. So Otmar's actually just flown off to Bahrain, and yeah, we're hoping to talk to a few customers.
That's an incredible story. That's it's an incredible story around, you know, where one conversation can lead to another and the opportunities that come off of that. And I was funny enough, I was talking to a business owner this morning about sort of luck, and there's an element of luck of being in the right place at the right time, but there's also, I firmly believe, you create your own luck. What
Yeah.
do you put that down to? That sort of series of successful conversations taking
So
place?
it's funny. I was talking to somebody last night about this, and I look at it slightly different to just creating your own luck. Life offers you a myriad of opportunities.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the real challenge is working out which opportunities you want to pursue.
yeah.
Um, and it's not there's no shortage of opportunities, but some opportunities are bad, you know. So you want to try to kind of not follow the ones that are going to lead you down a dark path, and try to follow the ones which you can see have real potential. And I think that's where it varies from luck to, you know, you can, that's the making your luck,
How
making
do
your own
you
luck.
spot those opportunities that you want to pursue? How do you know that they're the right ones to follow?
Uh, you hear people that you realize are for real. I think that's important.
Okay.
Judge the person you're talking to a little bit as to, are they going to carry through? That doesn't mean you should say that just because they haven't got any past history, they can't, you know, deliver on what they say they're going to do. But I tend to enter things slightly reserved. So, like I say, even when I met Otmar, I didn't know Otmar at all, and I met a few people like him. So it's like we talk. You kind of have a little bit of a wall up to make sure that you know. But if you know you can deliver something, then I'm quite happy to kind of go out there and offer my services to say, well, if you can do the other side of what you, so we have a
Yeah.
great relationship because he's very much business development. I'm a technical guy. I knew how to write it. I literally sat down and wrote the F1 timing app after we met Bernie. I literally it was like, I've got to do this. I had a business, so we had the skills in the business to bring together the graphics and things, but uh, it was there was an awful lot of work that then had to happen. So for me to deliver to him, it was kind of a two-way stretch.
Yeah.
He'd have made this happen. I have to make it happen on my side. So that's not necessarily making your own luck. That's following through on,
Yeah.
you know, on the opportunities. If you can't follow through on an opportunity, then you have to be very careful about things. And certainly when I look back on some of the things where I've started other things, I've got a lot of products we never got to market. I know when I start them that I feel like this isn't probably going to make it, even as I'm doing it, but we do a bit of work on it and we kind of put it, and then it sits there. And even Eventer, I looked through our list of projects we'd started. One of them was a wedding app, you know, and that was back in 2017, 16
Okay.
period.
Yeah.
So I kind of already got some of these things, and we'd actually got as far, I didn't realize, as doing some designs for it and things. And I was like, okay, so um, uh, things start and then sometimes they don't turn out exactly. Don't be afraid. It's the pivot that people talk about.
Yeah.
But you do need to put some investment in. So the other thing I learned was buy your toys. So the iPod was bought as a toy, and I explained to my wife why I was buying this toy. I was like, I just want one. I don't know why I want it. And she's like, it's all right, you can have it. And I'm like, I'm playing this thing. And I think this is amazing. I love it. And I'm like, and then I started thinking, well, I'm going to make this pay for itself. So I like to buy toys and then try to work out how to make them pay for themselves. So the one which I'm still struggling with, but I'm working on, I've got to make quite a bit of money out of it because I bought a lot of them, VR headsets
Yeah.
and 3D cameras, 360 cameras. So we have a 360 camera app, which is just launched. It's still version 0.8, so it's not got the marketing push yet. But our plan is to make it easy to get photos from the camera onto the headset.
And is this the one that Apple are bringing out? Because they're launching.
Well, Apple have the Vision Pro, and they're going to do a very sophisticated job.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in the Meta Quest because I don't think many people are going to have a £3,500 Apple headset, quite honestly. And if they do a great job, then fine.
There seems to be a
um,
huge degree of awareness there, isn't it? Aware of, sort of what interests you, where you're going, that vision, but also
yeah.
aware of what other people can bring to the party and where the collaboration can work together.
Yeah, you need to know your weaknesses. So I know I'm
Yeah.
technical. I'm not really a marketing person. I'm relatively organized, and I don't mind, rolling my sleeves up, and getting involved in, micromanagement where it's necessary to make sure stuff happens.
Okay.
There is a time when you have to micromanage stuff. I've got better at stepping back. Obviously, in the early days of Formula One, it was very intense micromanagement. It was too intense in some ways. Now I'm older, I've got a bigger team. We're about 25, so that kind of behavior isn't practical. So now I make sure though that I still have I'm still quite a great believer in office work. So we have an office. I employ a lot of young guys who are out of university, and I think they need to be in an office, quite honestly, for their own career development, because there's so much knowledge that goes around osmotically through the business. If you're working on a project and you've got a guy sitting next to you, literally every day I'll hear one of them overhear somebody talking to somebody else, and they'll go, "Oh, actually, yeah, it's over there," or you need to do this. I've already done this thing. And you can foster that in the right environment. But if they're all separated, COVID was very difficult, because if you've got young guys working at home, they don't get that guidance. Even if
Yeah.
they're really good, they go off in different directions and things. And
There's little water cooler moments, isn't it? Like you say,
yeah,
overhearing a conversation and just working and on the
it
spot
is.
coaching, on
And,
the spot
and
mentoring.
software guys are often quite introvert,
Yeah.
naturally. But unfortunately, software is also a team creative exercise. So it's kind of, they might naturally want to be away, but they actually need to be together if you're going to build something great and something large. Because there's too many moving parts these days in software. When I started out, you could write well, people wrote video games and things on their own,
Yeah.
in bedrooms. So I was lucky enough to experience that kind of early start, where you could do it all yourself. But these days, that isn't really the case. Not on proper enterprise stuff. You need a team. There are a lot of tasks. There is management. There will be meetings. If they're together, there will be less meetings because people will be more attuned. It's
Yeah.
trying to align everybody, get them on the same wavelength.
Team is crucial to growth, isn't it? So we'll come back to the team in a second, but before we do, let's just go back to sort of being a business owner. What would you say your biggest learnings have been so far as a business owner?
Um, well, I'm also slightly untraditional. I'm not I only borrow from myself. I'm not a VC funded. I don't have any external investment, except my mortgage. That was my first investment. So you can do it. It's very possible. But I like investing my own money because it keeps you honest about every pound you spend. I once had an actual argument with a marketing person when we were doing the F1 thing, saying, they wanted to fly out to all the races and hand out leaflets. And I said, I don't think this is going to return any actual sales, because, the number of people you can touch, even with a group, and that's going to cost me thousands of pounds to do.
Mm.
And I said, would you spend your own money on it? And they got quite upset with that. But it's a valid point. Effectively, if you got to ask that question, when you're doing these exercises, is this going to be a sensible thing? You still have to spend the money. Don't get me wrong. It's not something that you can't. But if you spend money, if you're spending somebody else's money, it can be a little more dangerous, I feel, and it keeps me honest. And obviously these days, I spend my other shareholders. We do have other shareholders these days, but
Yeah.
I still treat it very much like my own money, and try to make the decisions as to where you're going to spend money. So I'm unusual in this front, but
Do you try and foster that in the culture of the business, like treat every pound as if it was your own
yeah,
pound?
I mean, we aren't a fancy business.
Yeah.
We don't do fancy stuff. I always say to the guys joining that you're going to get a real lesson in how to do everything. We don't expect this to be your last job. It's not going to be your most glamorous job, but you're going to have the best outcomes. You're going to see more of life than you'll see in many large corporations which are very rich and can do lots of things, but you'll be in a single area. What's attractive for the people coming to us is that we give them everything. They can be marketing, they can move across the road, and they can do design, and they can build software, and then afterwards they can even do DevOps and deployments and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in software, we can find a home for you. I once had an architect come work for me as a graphic artist who later on went to become one of my best software engineers. So it was like, these things do happen because when people come from university, he was very mathematical, it turned out, but he'd always been in architecture, and architecture was a difficult profession to get into, it turned out. He discovered after getting his degree. But I could see he had something about him. And we started with some, he could build 3D models really quickly.
Transferable skills there, yeah.
Yeah, but actually, as soon as he got near a computer, he was just writing software.
Interesting.
And it's like, well, we're not now. A large company doesn't know how to deal with that kind of character. They think they made the wrong hire quite often because maybe their department also just doesn't have the breadth to use that kind of person. But we have that breadth, so because we're small, so that's where we foster our size.
So if you, I mean, it's a credible journey. So if you could go back to when you started, what was that, sort of 2006, 2000, something like that?
2006 November, I think, was actually.
Okay, so if you could sort of wind back the clock and had the opportunity to sort of start again, would you do anything different? Is there anything you change?
Not terrifically. I mean, I didn't have a lot of time to think, as you can kind of imagine. Literally the first month, I think, was kind of get up at 6 o'clock, do some admin, and then like midnight, go to bed, wake up again at 6 for about a month. I was just calling people constantly, trying to make sure the customers didn't dissipate, because when a company goes bust, there is a window of opportunity, and I could see that, where all the customers are going to reallocate they're big blue chip companies. This company is working for. We did things with banks and, like I say, the military, and they all needed to be kept on board. So the first thing I did was contact all the staff that I knew were working on the projects, and as I contacted them, I learned about the projects because I didn't know the projects. So I had to learn actually more about the mechanics of a lot of the projects we ended up doing than I was previously doing. So I had both learning how the projects worked and then persuading the customer that their project was in safe hands. Because at the end of the day, the customer didn't care who did it. They wanted to make sure their project was delivered, and everything ran smoothly. And I offered them that outlet. So it was. I wouldn't say I would do any of that differently. I think I would have, sort of 6 months after that, I wished I'd had a slightly stronger strategy, maybe. We kind of rolled into that period. We rolled into that period, and you were pinballing around. So I did spend money on various marketing activities which didn't really work, and I already knew that sales was probably going to be my weakness, and it took me a while. I had another guy involved early on. In fact, I had several guys. The best salespeople for me were never actually the people came to me with sales in their title. And there's a lot of relationship stuff really that really matters. If you're looking for a good salesperson, it's the person that actually just naturally has a lot of communication with people. They probably don't even know they're a salesman necessarily.
The sales landscape is definitely changing much more to a conversational, relationship-based model.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously needed more of an account management style sale because of the kind of business. So in the early days, we were producing e-learning packages. So this is the reason why we had graphics, and we had training design, and we had software. So we had kind of 3 different pillars, which is training design is like copywriting almost, because they would write the training. There would be subject matter experts involved. So often they were the training designers. Sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. So there's a kind of production process that goes with, but it involves multidisciplinary skills. So I already know I can't draw. So I was quite used to working with people with skills that I have little knowledge of. So the thing I had to bring was kind of cohesion to the business, really at that point. But sales was one of the things, obviously, which is not in that process. So I realized that the selling of e-learning is tough, very tough. It's even and that's the reason, after all, why the business I worked for before actually went bust, is because it's difficult to keep on finding the next job, to find the right people in the organization to keep selling. And so I was always interested in building a product, but it's kind of how we get to that product. Because once you've got a product, you've got something you can hang things off.
So there's important lessons in there, isn't there, around sort of spending the money and having that strategic plan. So on the marketing, making sure that you're spending it in areas, because marketing, there's an element that won't work. So it's making sure you test and measure and things, and understanding your weaknesses through sort of sales, and then getting people in around you. It's interesting you say about time to think. That's come up quite a lot in these interviews that I've done with sort of business leaders, entrepreneurs, about creating time in their diary, in their day, in their week, for space to think, and you get away from the business a little bit and have a bit more of that holistic view. Lots of great lessons in there. So think about the people, think about the team. What qualities do you look for in the team that you have around you, and how do you sort of foster a really productive working environment?
So in the early days, especially, if you're going from 0 to team of 5, all those 5 people should cover skills you don't have. A lot of people, I think, make the mistake of forming, because their close friends do what they do, they start a business from what their close friends do, and they're too close to them, and then they struggle because they don't have the other skills to deliver. And like I said, with the training stuff, I started the business actually with design and with those 3 skills, effectively. So the first 3 employees covered, or 4 employees actually. I had 2 graphic artists, 1 training designer, and myself. So we effectively were able to bind together and produce the product with that. And obviously having those different skills meant that we were able to service different kind of jobs. Things, we could go and sell websites, website design. We could even do print work and things. So we did, in the early days, we did things like manuals for electricity boards and things, fixing pylons, all sorts of weird and wonderful jobs that we could kind of do, and they're not even technical, no software involved in them. And like I say, effectively, by having all those different skills, the business starts to grow in ways that you don't necessarily expect. You'll make contacts, and the other thing is always to keep your ear to the ground. So and that's something which I think I would probably do differently in the early days. We had customers we probably should have pursued more, I would say. But this is also that business of opportunity and picking your opportunities. There was a load of opportunities we didn't take in the early days, and I do wistfully think about them and think, if we just stayed a bit closer to that bank or whatever, then maybe we would have had more business and it would have been easier. But you only have so many hours in the day, and I didn't fail. If you see what I mean.
Clearly not. So, let's face it, you can't do everything, can you? So
no, exactly. And you play the cards that you decide to play.
An interesting point you say about hiring people based on it's a really common thing that I see in businesses where business owners don't tend to necessarily look at what the business needs, what the role is required for the business's benefit. They look at somebody and go, oh, actually, I quite like them, and find the role to fit them. It's kind of making sure it's the other way around. Find the person that fits the role for the business rather than trying to find a role that fits the person. In regards to future growth, so successful journey so far, and there's more to come, I'm sure. Where do you see yourself in the business over the next 5 years? And have you got any advice that you'd give to people looking to grow over the next?
That's a good question. Where we see ourselves, 5 years is quite a long time, actually. I would say I look forward more the sort of 2-year range. I would like to see our product. I do have a long-term plan, but I also know that the best laid plans of mice and men. So I'm willing to not give it too much time, because I think working on the detail of getting this product to market. So we're going to be doing some more client work. IoT business does generate itself. Never be afraid of a different revenue stream. And I think we'll be doing more and more stuff in those various areas, just because we've got some name to it.
Yeah.
And we've got skills in the business that we can deliver global back office systems for IoT, which is a useful skill to have. We will deliver more apps, and they're kind of more my moonshots. And I feel relatively confident now that Eventa is going the right way. We've got traction. We've got trial sites, and we've got customers in the wings, and we've only launched 28 days ago. So it feels like you can find articles on Reuters, Otmar's in the press talking about it. So we've done a global launch. We use PR Newswire to prime the global press. We sent out a release recently, which was to America, Australia, and the UK. I learned that PR Newswire is very effective, by the way. If you have a product to tell people and the press are interested in it, we use that a lot with F1. We couldn't with F1 really do the more traditional types of marketing, because we were given F1's a marketing platform, right? So marketing is a very difficult thing to do without feeling like you're throwing stones in the sea, really.
Right.
But PR Newswire and those kind of things are just one of many.
One of them.
Not trying to promote them too much.
And what about some words of advice for business owners out there looking to grow and expand? Any words of wisdom or guidance?
Keep doing a good job.
Keep doing.
And always remember that it's a small world, and you might be much closer to somebody than you think that has the answer to whatever your current problem is. It's surprising. I mean, in my darkest times, where things haven't been looking right, and you feel like I can't see where this is going to keep going in this right direction. Putting the feelers out. I'm very impressed by LinkedIn, but just generally, just starting to talk to everybody and banging the drum makes a huge difference. It makes a difference psychologically to you, and as your psychological feeling changes, the better everything suddenly becomes. And banging the drum makes you feel better. So, in fact, I presume you probably found me because I revised my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't have one, and actually, before I spoke to you, I spoke to a recruiter, who was known through my school friend again, my kid's school, and she said, "Oh, well, when I look at your LinkedIn profile, I don't know what you do." I went, "That's funny, because I've never put anything on there." And I realized that the last thing I had on it was 2013. So I changed that. And since then, suddenly everybody's talking to me. So
change it back for a bit of peace and quiet.
yeah, I might change it back. Yeah, I mean, I did. In fairness, the reason I used to keep it that way was because I wanted the peace and quiet. Because we used to get a lot of recruiters basically through the door. But it's an interesting exercise, and I think certainly a lot of small businessmen look at LinkedIn with slight trepidation, especially if they don't do anything which is particularly digital. They don't think it maybe is that relevant to them, but actually it's a surprisingly effective marketplace. It's also the only happy social media site left on the planet where everyone's actually pleased to see you.
I do like that idea, though, sort of like, constantly asking questions, having conversations with people. You genuinely don't know where one conversation or the next conversation that could lead to a life-changing event. So it's having that sort of mindset of, there's a lot of fantastic, supportive people out there in the community. If you don't, like, say, bang your drum and get out there and speak to people, you never come across them. So really, really, really useful advice. Thank you ever so much for that. Listen, that's been really, really fantastic. It's an absolutely fundamentally incredible story. Where would our listeners go to find out a bit more about what it is you do, how to get in touch?
Have a look on our website. Also, check out our LinkedIn page, Soft Power, SOFT space PAUER.
Fantastic. Alex, thank you ever so much for your time. Appreciate it. All the best.
Thank you, David. All the best.